The things to really test is, are you really actually standing up to the values that you espouse, in particular when things are not going well? The real important things is when the chips are down and times are hard, the economy melts, or you lose a big customer, or whatever the case may be. Are we actually abandoning those things that we claim we hold most dear, or are we actually doubling down on them as ways to guide us through the hardest decisions in the company's history? That's the one thing I would tell you of all, and I've made so many damn mistakes. We could have a 9-hour podcast and I couldn't cover them all. However,
welcome to Winning Cultures in SMB. I'm your host, Kai Sato. And today we're joined by my friend Michael O'Neill, the executive chairman of Get Well. Michael, thanks for taking some time.
Hey, Kai, it's great to be with you today.
So this show is all about culture at successful middle market companies. And we often hear so much about the culture at Alphabet or Amazon or Microsoft or some hot new startup and the happy hours and the ping pong tables. And really what we're trying to zero in on here are these businesses that are doing 20, 50, 100 million, 200 million in revenue that are really the backbone of the American economy. We understand their culture, what makes them tick. And especially because you've built one, we are excited to dive in on your story. Would you mind giving us a little bit about you, your background, and how Get Well came to be?
Of course. Yeah. So, almost about 25 years ago to the day, I was actually doing a JD MBA at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and was diagnosed with cancer kind of 3 years into my 4-year joint degree program. So I was kind of, as a 28-year-old, thinking that the whole world was in front of me, kind of was welcome to the cancer club, as many of us are, kind of unceremoniously, through a lot of lower back pain and stomach pain and night sweats and all the kind of craziness that goes on. And so really spent a lot of time unexpectedly in surgery and chemotherapy, and really kind of came out of it with a heck of a lot of gratitude for the amazing people who took care of me, but also a lot of fire in my belly about just making it better for the next person up. And that was kind of the genesis for starting a company called Get Well Network, to just help people take a more active role kind of in their health journey.
Incredible. And what does the business look like today? Number of employees, where are you located? How's it evolved a little bit?
Yeah, so ultimately the business is one that creates, kind of sells, implements, and supports what they would call patient engagement software into large health systems and hospitals kind of around the country and around the world. The company is about $100 million in revenue. There's about 350 to 400 employees in the company. And we spend most of our time either one, building great software and using artificial intelligence and all the other tools we have at our disposal, and then really kind of supporting really large, complex organizations who are trying to deliver personalized care, but there are oftentimes so many obstacles in the way of doing that, the way their folks intend to. And we try to actually use technology and, importantly, people and workflow to kind of make, you might be one of 10,000 patients being cared for. We actually want to make it feel like you're the only person kind of being cared for. And we spend most of our time trying to help organizations figure that part out.
Before we dive in on Get Well today, its culture, how that's evolved, can you go back to even more of the origin story? Did you have any co-founders? How did you land your first customer? Was it just smooth sailing, or were there some bumps along the way?
No, everything was so easy, as you know, it always is. Well, to be honest with you, I've so much, I go back and do a lot of teaching down at the business school at Georgetown these days. And I always tell them, if I'm in town, the answer is yes, because I have so much gratitude for the flexibility, the dynamism, the help and support I got while I was actually still in school. So the answer to the question of how we kind of got rolling was, I was in an entrepreneurial research class at the business school. And I was also in a small business law planning seminar at the law school. And both of these professors of these classes both made me and allowed me to do like extensive research on this concept of Get Well Network. And part of the research was interviewing 5 hospital CEOs from Northern Virginia, Maryland, and DC, and down into Southern Virginia. And I ended up meeting with their executive teams, telling them about my own experience that I actually had as a cancer patient, asking them if I could interview their patients, their families, and their nurses about the kind of care they were receiving. They said yes. I presented the results back into their boardrooms, into their executive teams, and lo and behold, my experience wasn't unique. It was quite common. And so 2 out of these 5 CEOs who we actually did the surveys with said, listen, we love this concept. We are trying to deliver patient-centered care. We believe technology could help. What can we do to help this concept kind of come off of a PowerPoint deck and into reality? I'm like, well, if you sign this 3-year contract to buy software that doesn't exist, it would really help. And 2 of them actually signed it. Wow. And so our first 2 customers came during research as a student, and we signed contracts contingent on the fact that we would actually create some software that would do what we said it was going to do. But and then we took these 2 contracts and raised $1 million based on some early success, meaning that customers would actually buy the value proposition.
Curious, because I was a co-founder of a business right out of college. Somewhat similarly, we won a business plan prize at USC and raised $1 million when we were 22 and stuff like that. There can be a lot of excitement for a concept. You can also get deep into feasibility and get a lot of pushback. I've had friends that came out of the same program that people shot down their ideas and they'd already started the company and they were already successful. Was the reaction from pretty much everyone like this needs to exist? Clearly you landed some customers, but was there anyone who was saying, hey, Mike, I don't know about this, man. Like you should be really careful. This stuff could go south real fast.
Yeah, well, to give you an indication, healthcare doesn't move quickly. These are highly regulated, really complicated, like large businesses. And so while those kind of very early wins during like student time prior to graduation sounded like they came relatively easy, it literally took us 8 years to get 8 customers and then 4 years to get 400 more.
Wow.
So a lot of people said no. A lot of, almost everyone said, hey, of course we want our patient care to feel more patient-centered, more whole person, more proactive, more personal. But we have 15 other things that we need to do kind of prior to this. And so this Get Well Network was anything but an overnight success. It was like a crazy person that just come off of chemotherapy thinking, hey, no matter what I do, with whatever limited talent I have, which was very limited, and whatever limited time I may have, we're simply going to make it better for the next. We will charge through a brick wall, to figure out, how to make this better. And so that's kind of how it is. We began to kind of get this thing rolling, but it was not fast and it was not easy.
I'm going to delve a little further just on this because I think it has so much to do with culture and who your founders are and the grit and the resolve and the origin story of the business. And I think that just translates to the rest of the organization into perpetuity. But you sign these customers, then you got to go build a product. And we're talking about, lean and agile didn't exist. Cloud wasn't there. So how were you going saying, all right, I signed you, I got your cash, and now I got to go get this thing built. Had you ever built software? Like, did you have a technical co-founder? How did you do any of that stuff?
Yes, you appreciate this. So before I went to graduate school, I worked for a very famous ad guy named Donnie Deutsch, who to this day still appears on like The Last Word around like, pop culture and all. And so I watched an incredible entrepreneur build a very successful advertising agency. And yet, as you probably know in advertising, so I had no technical background. I knew how to take a brand and position it to somebody else kind of thing, but I had no idea. So we sell these contracts. And to your point, I'm like, uh-oh, now we actually have to go make this work. And so I actually had 2 co-founders. One was the guy who I'd worked with during my advertising days, who used to ran our IT organization. And so I called Jeff Cuff up in Connecticut, and he knew I was sick, and he's a very dear friend. And he literally picked his life up and said, hey, man, I'm all in. So picked up his life, moved down to DC, and was a co-founder. And within 30 days, we went and spent some very precious dollars on a consulting engagement with one of these like web development firms back in the day. And we didn't have a lot of success with them, but we did find a pure genius. At the time, he was like a 26-year-old young guy, Robin Kavanaugh. After the meeting, called him, asked him if he'd have a beer in Georgetown. He did. He became our CTO, and 25 years later, he's still our CTO, and is just a genius. So I happened to, pull 2 very technically oriented, folks into the company from day one. And These are my best friends to this day, and I'm very grateful for all they've done for me, for the world, for my family, for the business, for everyone.
Incredible stuff. Perfect segue, because you've got 3 founders coming together and very different skill sets. What was the culture like? What's the culture like today? You know, it's what everyone talks about it. I always say it's kind of like the terroir in winemaking, and everyone kind of knows what it is. They just really can't actually describe it sometimes. What's the culture at Get Well? How did it start? How has it evolved?
It's really interesting. So I would tell you the way it started was really, I want to say in some ways simple, but it really kept us centered way back then as 3 people, and continues to keep the company centered today. And the way I would kind of describe it would be on 2 levels. Like, one, we have this notion of like even purpose over mission that kind of drives this whole thing. And for us, like, the purpose has always been so clear, and it's actually been very pure. The business is complicated. Our customers are complicated. It's B2B, enterprise software. It's really complicated stuff. But the purpose is the simplest thing in the world. Help people take a more active role in their health journey, because we had a fundamental thesis that a more active, involved, engaged patient is a better patient, and will have better outcomes. And these outcomes that all these providers are actually seeking and trying to drive towards, they're elusive, and so we always thought that the missing equation was, well, if the patient didn't feel like a number and didn't feel like on the outside looking in on their own care during all these complicated things that were going on, we think there'd probably be better decisions being made, and we had better outcomes. And so number one, I guess this whole thing was driven from that purpose. And that purpose is important because there isn't anybody, my story sounds dramatic on its surface, but anybody you meet, everybody that we've hired, both on day 1 and on day 25 year, if you will, they all have either themselves, their mom, their dad, their son, their college roommates, daughter, whatever the case may be. We've all lived through this, and we actually want it to be better. That's like number one. And on the second level, it's funny. I have this argument all the time with the dean of the business school at Georgetown, who's a dear friend, and he has this. Everyone has this quote in these business schools: "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And we always said from the very beginning, "Hey, that is true, but values sit at the dinner table, and they actually sit alone." And so the company's culture from very early on was forged around 4 value statements that, candidly, as much change as we have seen, these have not changed. And we kind of hire off it, we fire off it, we promote off it, we choose customers with it, we even choose technology partners from it. And these values are what kind of really forges everything that the company has done.
No question. I think you raise a really critical point, which is, we always hear this missionary versus mercenary. And in the long run, the missionaries tend to make more money, right? Those are the businesses that tend to last and outperform. But being able to tie everyone back to that mission. And so it can be as simple as Riot Games based here in Los Angeles. Everyone's a gamer, right? If you wanted to work in, forget HR, legal, sales, you had to play games. And you had, not just their games, you had to play other games. A business I imagine you guys run up against all the time, Epic Systems, powers so much of the healthcare system. If you want to work there, you're an engineer, you're going into the OR, right? I mean, you're going to see some stuff and people will pass out. And so just bringing people in who are true believers. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mentioned in my email to you, but I was talking about you last night because my mother-in-law was over. She is a thyroid cancer survivor. She's also a postpartum nurse at Cedars. My wife is now deeply involved with the City of Hope in Los Angeles and runs a board for that. And everyone can relate to what you guys do because inevitably we run up against it. And so I think that's such a powerful piece. I guess it's just back to your Deutsch days, but it's real, right? It's real because, this is something that if you're going to come work here, sure, the purple matters and we can think of it certain ways, but you're buying into this. You're putting your 168 hours a week into this because you're trying to change the outcome for people that you love. And so it's a deeply, deeply powerful mission.
Man, it's so true. And, the easy part is like painting patient quotes on the walls, and making kind of cool T-shirts and, choosing a color like purple and having Purple Tuesdays because purple is the symbol of royalty. And if we treat every patient like they remember the royal family, then we're going to actually have better healthcare. Like these are actually the easy things. The things to really test, is whether or not, again, in your hiring, in your firing, in your promoting, in your teaming, in all the things that kind of go on, in your commission structures, in all the things that kind of happen, like, are you really actually standing up, like to the values that you espouse, in particular when things are not going well? It's easy to have the company picnic on the best year in the company's history, to have cool t-shirts, you know what I mean? That have all the cultural statements kind of on them, and they're not unimportant. But the real important things is when the chips are down and times are hard, the economy melts, or you lose a big customer, or whatever the case may be. Are we actually abandoning those things that we claim we hold most dear, or are we actually doubling down on them as ways to kind of guide us through the hardest decisions in the company's history? And I think that's the one thing I would tell you of all. And I've made so many damn mistakes. We could have a 9-hour podcast and I couldn't cover them all. However, that part we got right, I'd say literally every time, and it's been the most important thing and the most fulfilling thing, as an entrepreneur that you could possibly imagine.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about where your values came from? Because you're the CEO, you're the founder, you have to set the tone, you have to live it, and then it can permeate the organization.
So running the risk of filling our time together with sad healthcare stories, 5 years after my cancer diagnosis, my wife and I lost a twin baby girl to what they call a diaphragmatic hernia after 19 days. And the reason I'm telling you this is that you asked me that question, where these values come from. I'm literally in my new role as vice chair when I'm not on an 8 a.m. in the morning, every morning stand-up meeting anymore. I'm actually spending some time finally, putting some thoughts down after like 21 years of thinking about this particular kind of moment in my life. And I'm in the process of writing a book called Angel Dad, all the things I never got to teach my little daughter, Macy. And the first section of this book is called Beginnings. And so these beginnings are all about these things growing up in this I grew up in this crazy Irish, Italian, Catholic family in New York. There were 5 of us in less than 7 years. It was basically a pack of animals, 4 boys and a younger sister. And so you don't even realize that some of these values that your parents are espousing or you learn from your siblings, you don't really realize them until you take a stance, like pull back and think about them. And so the values at the company really mirror the way that I grew up. Value number 1, root for each other. It doesn't mean we always agree, but at the end of the day, it's apparent. Am I rooting? Are you rooting for me in this? Am I rooting for you? So number 1 is root for each other, because we always played on teams. It was always the O'Neills versus anybody else in the neighborhood. So that was like number 1. Number 2 was share openly and honestly. The world is moving so fast that if we share our successes with others, that they can benefit from them, you better do it fast. And if we're comfortable sharing our failures to help my neighbor or my friend or my teammate avoid them, that's a good thing. So share openly and honestly. The third one, be world class every day. I came from an underdog family. We have been an underdog company. Our customers are multi-billion-dollar health systems who are about to sign a $4 million contract thinking to themselves, are we really, we're Kaiser Permanente, are we really going to sign this contract with Get Well Network from this kid that's half bald from chemotherapy who actually is mad about patient care? And so if we're not world class every day, those questions will actually result in lost business. And so we have to really kind of hit above our weight class on a daily basis. And the fourth one is find strength in our differences. At Get Well Network, we have touched 85 million patients at the most vulnerable time in their care with our software. These people are from every single walk of life, race, creed, religion, socioeconomic range, political spectrum. And so you better kind of put around yourself in life, at work, and where you play with people that represent, candidly, the complete diversity of thought and life experience to allow us to make sure we meet them where they are, because they're making the hardest decisions in their entire lives, and our job is to be there for them. And so these values, root for each other, share openly and honestly, be world class every day, and find strength differences, they literally are embedded in the way that my parents raised us in New York. And I'm just so grateful, honestly, for this crazy childhood of a lot of laughs, a lot of tears, a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, a lot of fighting, a lot of battling, a lot of competing. And it really kind of helped embed these values in me from a very early age.
Wow. That's super cool. One thing we talk a lot about with leadership teams, especially CEOs, is it does have to start with you. It has to be authentic, and you got to do it every single day. And there's a story we like to share. You may know it because you're a sports guy, but when Steve Kerr took over for the Warriors, he went up to visit Pete Carroll, and he said, "Hey, first time coach here, man, trying to figure this thing out. Things are going pretty well for you guys. Things went well for you at USC. How do you do this?" And Pete's like, "All right, well, what's your plan? What are you going to do as a coach?" And he's like, I think these offensive sets, I'm bringing in this guy, he's defensive. Whoa, he's like, whoa, that doesn't matter. You're going to figure all that stuff out. You know the X's and O's stuff, right? If you don't, man, you shouldn't be the coach. What's your culture? Who are you? And so he gave him this homework assignment. He said, I want you to go back to the hotel tonight, and I want you to nail down no more than 10 things that make you you. And obviously Steve Kerr went through an awful lot, father assassinated, things like that.
Yeah.
He said, I want you to narrow it down. We're going to pick about 3 or 4. And that's going to be the basis of your culture, because it has to come from you, Steve Kerr. And only then, if you do that and you live it every day, can it become a real value or culturally driven organization. And one of those big ones, and it's always is joy. And, okay, we're going to compete. That's a big one. But we're going to have joy in doing this every single day. And we're going to have, that's joy in practice. That's joy in film. That's joy on game day. And so whether you knew it or not, you went and did that exact thing down to the 4, and then you got to live it. And so it's a real testament to, and I think why a quarter century later, with, a lot that goes on with any business and all sorts of technological evolution, but you guys are still here.
I love this story. One thing I would just say, it's interesting. I had an opportunity to work with an executive coach very early in Get Well's days, and before my first meeting, he made me write what he called my leadership constitution. And so basically, it's I declare that ... and then you can count on me to ... And he said, listen, I want you to take a week before we meet again, and I want you to fill this out. It should be slightly aspirational, meaning that like on your best day, when your haircut is at the right stage, when you're wearing something that really fits you, you just had a great workout, the whole thing. It's like, so on your best day, not ridiculous, but on your very best day, what do you show up as, and what can people count on you to do? And I want you to check it with some people around you that you love and trust, but who also would call you on your BS if you're actually, saying something that isn't true. And he said, then I'm going to ask you, like, what is your willingness to put that leadership constitution publicly, like on your desk, so anyone who ever comes in to meet with you is invited to candidly like celebrate and acknowledge when you're living up to this constitution, and also like call you out, when you're not. And one of the things I actually had in mind is that you can count on me too was include others in key decisions. And there were times in our meetings, where I would invite my executive team and they would say to me, hey, Mike, look, like, so appreciate where we're heading, but I just want to say, like, hey, I'm the head of sales, or I'm the head of product, or everything may be. Like, I don't feel like my full voice was heard, in this. And my response always was, hey, thank you. Like, that's not the constitution that I actually told you, I would lead with. And so let's actually revisit that, because I actually need your voice, in this. So to your point, man, these, whatever constructs or frameworks that we actually use as leaders, as entrepreneurs, whatever, it doesn't really matter, like the construct. But what matters is the authenticity of it. Because the moment that you don't live what you claim you're living on your T-shirt or on your poster behind your desk, or whatever the thing might be, the whole thing falls apart, man, too quickly. I mean,
100% trust, right? And you just start to have that trust erode. I grew up with most of my life without my dad around for a few reasons, but I always sought out mentors. And I worked for this large real estate investment trust right out of college called Mace Rich. We owned Tyson Center out by you guys. Sure. And while I was there, Mace Siegel, who's hanging behind me, unfortunately, he's not here anymore, but he became this quintessential mentor in my life. I've kind of had 2 huge ones. And, the reason why I bring him up, he was gruff, and he had, swore like a truck driver and chain smoked, Pall Mall filterless. And he was a big sports guy, and we kind of hit it off. I had to do thankless work that no one else wanted to do. And technically we weren't supposed to do as a public company, but we still had some assets that needed some attention. So as the junior analyst, I got stuck with it. And that led to going and reporting to this guy. And he just wanted to know what you thought. And he wanted to know what you thought, not only about the situation, and you had to tread a little lightly, but he wanted to know, whether you thought that the Yankees were going to win or what the spread was going to be on Sunday night. He wanted to know what you thought or what was going on in his organization. He became chairman emeritus at that point in time. And he wanted to hear from everyone. But if you had the chutzpah to even strike up a conversation with him, because he was a bit terrifying, all he wanted to know is, what's your story? What makes you tick? How can you contribute here? And, when I left the company to go start one, he said, I knew you were going to leave the company the day you walked in my office. I expected this conversation. And so he said, I better see more of you, not less. And so it was a huge thing in life. But I think true leadership comes down to this two-way street and living those values. And without that, everyone kind of knows, right? They know if it's bullshit. They know if this just isn't adding up, and especially a place like that. Some questions that I'd love to ask you about how you find employees. How do they find you? How do you recruit? How do you get people that can live these values?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's interesting that, as you know this, that the stronger the core, the team, and the culture is, and candidly, the deeper it is, the more authentic it actually is, you begin to, recruiting in some ways, it begins to build itself. Because what ends up happening is when you're a part of a team, it doesn't matter if it's a sports team or a work team, whatever, when it's running the way that feeds you, and induces energy, candidly, you talk about it, you think about it, you celebrate it, it doesn't matter if you're out at a bar, you're out at a party, you're back at home, you're with your uncles and aunts for Thanksgiving, whatever the combination is, it actually becomes a big part of what's inducing your energy in life. And so at Get Well for so many years, man, we were so blessed because you don't have to look very far for inspiration in our work. Because again, it's literally the people that you care about who happen to be in a hospital who are calling saying, hey, is this a Get Well hospital? Can you help me? And so these things kind of go on. And so I guess I would tell you look, recruiting and choosing talent is never easy. It's a hyper competitive world for great talent always. But man, our people were our best recruiters, not a recruiting firm, because they were constantly talking about some cool project they were working on, something they were working on at work, some new thing we've done we have a foundation with a company called Get Involved Now. We had this Get Well Olympics where we would have old people like me run 4x100 relays and pull hamstrings and all this crazy stuff. But the point is there was always something going on, but it became part of people's vibe, and how they would kind of walk through life. And so, man, the amount of people that we hired from referrals and were friends of people that were already partners of ours or what have you, and customers who wanted to come work with us. So it was that kind of flywheel that you said it to begin our discussion today. When the culture thing is right, man, it's more important than any piece of artificial intelligence or software code or anything,
No question. And look, at the base of this, great cultures are cults. And they self-select. And we're not shying away from that on this show. We want to embrace that so that people a big part of what we do at Malo is about self-actualization. That's a core value of ours. If you're working with us or at our companies, we want that to be the best path for you in your life, because life is precious, life is short. And so to your point, people should be talking about it. It should kind of make the hair raise up, and they should be really proud of what they're doing. And if it's not for them, then they should feel that too, right? 100%. I mean, it should be kind of that oil and water type of environment. And so I think you embrace that as a great culture and you live it every single day. And it's like free agents want to join you, right? It's like a winning team. They're like, wait, I want to be a part of that. They show the love.
Hey, and by the way, all these things, look, when you're around for, 25 years, there are obviously ebbs and flows, and man, look, when you're in flow state, you know it. You're winning customers, great talents coming to you. No one's leaving who you actually don't want to leave. All the things are kind of working. And then there are ebbs, man, where you're like, man, shit, like we got that wrong. Like we brought a key person into the organization. We didn't filter strongly enough on our values. The person's very talented, resume is incredible, but they're actually destroying like the team's desire to kind of run through a brick wall, you know? So how slow or fast we have been in the past in identifying that has either hurt us, you know, more than it should have, self-inflicted, you know, or it's really helped us, because even when we found out that it wasn't right, either they knew it or we knew it. When you move on that, lets people like, oh, hey, this thing is real. Like, you're not just BSing with a quote on the wall. Like, it's not just my T-shirt that says root for each other. We're actually living the values that we're actually espousing, you know? And so, but man, oh man, like, this is something that I do feel like, hey, from the beginning, the entrepreneur and the founder and the CEO better have this both really clear and live to it very true. However, as the company grows, man, it better be the employees who are actually taking control, owning, and generating culture. I do not believe that culture is something to be preserved ever. It's to be generated. Culture is generated every single day in how we talk to one another, who we actually create, who we actually recruit, who we actually bring into the company, how we're meeting, how we're like confronting conflict in the org. It's generated on a daily basis. It's not to be preserved. It's to be actually created, you know? And that's how these things evolve, you know? But man, this is, again, I would tell you, of all of the things we've either hit or missed on, the most rewarding thing is when that stuff is right. And the great thing is you control that. You know what I mean? You can control like how you're living. It's a really wonderful way to kind of stay up late and get up early, you know?
Yeah. How did you have to evolve as the leader, as the organization shifted, as the one who's setting and preserving culture?
You know, I just give you two major things, one along the way and one extremely recently. So along the way, like, the evolution was a fairly cliche and natural one. And it was actually like, when people say, hey, my job is to hire people who are smarter than me, it's actually true. Now, when you do that, you have to actually let them make calls that you wouldn't otherwise make, you know? And so my first wave of evolution was really kind of two things. It was being faster to pull the trigger when I had made a wrong call on a key person. And the second thing is to trust, you know, that when we had the right key person in, and man, look, my instincts are in sales and marketing, and I trust him. My track record should have me trusting them for all the software that I've sold in my life. And so like my instincts on the other stuff are just instincts. They're not based on success or track record. So my ability to like really, in the evolution, to truly let go and to enable, empower, and even demand our key folks to make calls who are closest to the product or closest to the tech or closest to the customer that I would have made differently, and to stand behind them and support them in those things was a key evolution. And then most recently, man, it's been the most interesting thing. And people, you know, so about a year and a half ago, we did our third private equity turn, you know, and so for the last year and a half, you know, I clearly was an employee, not an owner, you know, but obviously a very important one. And then as of January 1st of this year, for the first time ever, like I'm not a CEO for the first time in 25 years. So there's actually a new CEO who I also am now rooting for. She's fantastic, and I stand behind her. But as a vice chair, like now, like I have to let go of not only operations, I have to let go of the culture. It's not my culture to actually build. You know, it's Deepti and the employees do that now. It's their culture to actually generate and fill and evolve. And so even when they change when they do erase root shutter from the wall, hey, it's theirs to actually, you know, so I'm in a new place, you know, in life around this organization, and one that really needs to truly kind of let go and let them generate what the next chapter of this is going to be all about.
How has that already shifted? What are some of the specifics? Is that one? Is it root for each other? Like what are some of the ones that are off the wall now?
A couple of major things. So number one, we combined a rather large company, Get Well Network, with a rather small startup called RhythmX AI. And the name of the new company is GW Rhythm X. It's no longer Get Well. So this is you can imagine 25 years of building this purple Get Well network culture is now GW Rhythm X, and it's blue. So like fundamental things, that we, and people are always like, oh man, is that her? I'm like, actually, it is almost like, you are finally have an opportunity to kind of step back, appreciate with like profound gratitude, like all of the steps in the journey. And also like with gratitude to say, hey, this is yours now. Preserve what you think should be preserved and completely blow up with a stick of dynamite things that you believe need to kind of move. And so for the new crew, it started with the name of the actual company and the colors, which were very foundational, to the aura, to the mission, to the purpose, to the culture. And so, yeah, man, those are just the beginnings, but there's a lot more as well.
Wow, that is that is a lot to digest, and I think really good for you and good for the organization, because the only way that it finds that next rhythm, I guess pun intended,
yes,
is with an authentic leader 100%. And a team being able to do what they need to do. They can't be looking over their shoulder the whole time. It won't work.
100%, man. It's funny too, because my former team knows, like, I just don't traffic, in any gossip or any like, oh, well, she's doing this way, and doesn't this piss you off? Like, so they don't even reach out for me on that stuff. And the only thing I ever tell people is, the only thing I would recommend to you, because we've done it a million times in our past, is lean into the change. You know what I mean? Like, lean into this fully. And the moment that you feel a blood cell that sniffs of preservation, it's the wrong action. It's the wrong energy, And so like, anyway, so like I am fully, whatever they decide to name their values, I am fully rooting for her and rooting for the team. I will continue to share openly, and they can just discard my opinion. They can take it if it's helpful to them. You know what I mean? And I will continue to find strength in the new differences that they actually bring. This is now an AI first, higher tech, candidly, company, higher tech, kind of AI first, incredible scale in the new leaders' backgrounds. And so, man, oh man, as a major shareholder, and somebody who always wants us to succeed, but it's a lot of change for a lot of people.
It's going to be tough. We talk about this all the time, right? Creative destruction's undefeated. And so just accepting the fact that technology is going to change things. People are going to change. It's like a sports team. People age out, they retire. And so for some of the people, I would imagine it's not an easy thing. It's not going to be their home anymore. And if it's not, then they've got to go find that next place. And this stuff, I mean, we deal with a lot of multi-generational, family-owned type of businesses. And, that transition is hard. Succession is difficult in what you do there. But if it's not authentic, if you're still trying to do it the way that grandpa intended or things like that, it's really not going to work. And so, really good for you guys. I am rooting for you guys, because that's not an easy one. But the only way is to pass the baton and then get out 100%. Of the way, right? That's the only path.
100%. So, and now I have more time, man. I have some time to restore and have conversation with people like you, man. So it's all good.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Won't take up all of your day. At some point, I'm going to circle back and I want to know more about what you're writing and all that fun, I think, important, cathartic, introspective stuff that you're doing. If you can, as you were doing this, or as you're looking, maybe as you have even more untethered perspective, what are some of these other cultures that you admire? What are some of these other things that you say, hey, like, obviously coming from sports, but just what inspires you that you would go back, I wish I would have done that? Or you're passing to your friends saying, hey, look, I'm out of the game a little bit right now, but take a look. What are some of these things that you've tried to emulate and make your own?
Yeah. So I guess like two things. One, and this will date me, but there was a corporate culture as I was building our company, in of all places, believe it or not, in the airline industry. So when Southwest Airlines first came out, what was so evident and impressive to me was their whole culture was built around love, the entire culture. And where you'd see it show up was actually everywhere, in everything from their website design, to literally the cover letter on the airline magazine, from the CEO every month in the airline that was tucked in the back seat of the chair that you'd actually get into, from their employees telling jokes in a microphone before you actually would take off. So literally, like, they decided on a culture that was so authentic and embedded in that it didn't matter if it was the guy taking your bags, the person like checking you in at the thing, the person on the phone when you had something that got screwed up in your reservation, or in the things they would write. It was just so consistent and so pervasive at 20,000 employees. And so from the beginning, I was like, shit, man, these guys can do this at 20,000 employees. Like, we can do this at 400 employees or 200 employees or 100 employees. Like, and so I know this is like an old school company, but it was overwhelmingly impressive and also resulted in a lot of success for many, many years in how much they leverage culture to drive the business. And you felt it as a customer, as an employee, as a partner, I'm sure, as well. And so it was very, very impressive. That'd just be like one thing I would just reflect back on and think about. And then, man, like, probably not too dissimilar to you in your background, my life growing up was really surrounded by a lot of sports stuff. I have siblings that are in the business of sports. I have a daughter who plays basketball at Gettysburg College right now, just won their second straight Centennial Championship as a sophomore. So she's on her way to the NCAA tournament.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you very much. But being around teams, I had a chance to coach both my daughters kind of growing up. And it's funny how these things cross over. So we always had these three rules on teams I would pick up from people like, Coach Pop at the Spurs. These guys that you watch and you're like, man, the way that you're watching his players 20 years after they're playing, naming their kids after him. So I'm like, something is right. And so we would always say, hey, root for each other, outwork everyone, play with confidence and joy. If we do these three things, like, as a team, then, like, man, look, we're either winning or we're learning. Like, we're never losing. We're truly never losing, And so, like, these would be the kind of things that we constantly spend our time getting around people who are like that. We seem to kind of attract them pretty well in places where we live, work, and play, and we both build these cultures on, and we also just participate in them, and we're grateful for them, And so I guess those would be the kind of things that we spend most of our energy around, here in life.
Those are two great ones. Correct me if I'm wrong. Both you and Southwest started as napkins. You guys were penciling this stuff out. So back to the origin story for both Southwest and Get Well. I mean, you were emulating very directly early on.
Yes.
And I'll say, Coach Pop, I mean, there's a book called The Culture Code written by Daniel Coyle. We have a lot of people read it. And I mean, if I had to kind of have a last supper, I'd want Pop as one of the few people there, right? Like, I've had one of my dear friends through golf is Doc Rivers, and I've gotten to know Coach Bud as well. And I pepper those guys with questions. I'm like, wait, what's real? What's not? Like, how does this work? No, tell me. Like, they're like, oh, dude, the meals and the wine, like, you got to buy new pants as soon as you start coaching for the Spurs. Like, it is real, because it's all about, he fills your cup. And he might be hard on you, but he loves you. And then back to key people. I mean, that only worked because you have someone like Tim Duncan, right? You have a selfless star who buys in and can take it. And, Kerr has talked about with Steph Curry, right? Like, you have this selfless star. And so it's weird how life kind of works back around. But that's what I mean when we talk about the things that work in the locker room. They need to be, in my opinion, even more present in the boardroom. And that includes humility and just owning up to the mistakes that we all inevitably make ourselves, hiring, firing, making the wrong decisions, all that type of stuff. And, one of my heroes is Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. And I love how open they are about mistakes. I love that they'll just like rattle them all off. Right. And so I think it's so interesting, and we all feel it. You're around someone who just can't admit when they're wrong. And especially in a leadership role, it's so weird. And so I think that those are two great paradigms.
Having done this for like a long time now, when I was first starting the company, if you remember, we were just coming off the Jack Welch era at GE, right? Who was like the command and control, like, prototype, like, great CEO, right? Who pretty much ruled with an iron fist. I'll tell you what you need to know. And he was very successful. Now, when we were starting our company, the aura of that, as far as it was matching society's evolution, was starting to become dated, where people thought that transparency was like the superpower of the next generation leader. Today, transparency is table stakes. It's vulnerability that is transformative. I'm literally telling you where my holes are, where I have blind spots, where I've made mistakes as recently as this morning when I kind of made the call and did this, and it's already, having a bad consequence. And what that does is I need you. I need you. You don't all just need me as a CEO. I actually need you and your greatness, every day, because together you'll fill in my blind spots and I will fill in some of yours. And so I think this evolution from I am CEO, I know everything, just damn it, get behind me and follow. And I'll tell you what you need to know to kind of, hey, let me make sure everyone understands the information, so you can make a decision, but I'll still make them. To now, hey, here's the information. Here's where my strengths are. Let me make this call. I'm going to include you in it. I need you to make these calls because I need you, in this. So I think this is the evolution of where things are heading. And I don't think kind of tech evolution changes any of this.
Couldn't agree more. You look at someone like Satya Nadella, who runs Microsoft. It's all about empathy. Totally. Right. It's understanding that I see you, I can connect with you, I'm human, right? And I think we've hopefully gotten past this, there's the front of the business card and the back of the business card, and they need to be bifurcated. No, the back of the business card's more important, right? What's going on in Mike's life and what's going on with his kids and all that type of stuff, especially when you're trying to build something that doesn't exist yet, which is the hardest thing that there possibly is to do. And just being able to be open about that. And I think, look, there's real strength in vulnerability, but it takes the right locker room. Right. It takes, you don't want to just go into a room and open up to people, and that doesn't work. And so that has to be curated, lived, enforced. And I couldn't agree more. I think, look, sure, AI, especially agentic AI, we'll talk about some of this stuff and how it may impact you guys in the future, but people still have to get along. They have to communicate. They have to bond. And if anything, the ideas and the creativity matter more, in my opinion, because that's where things are going to go. And that's a real asset. Before we talk a little bit about AI, you mentioned something I think it's really critical and difficult, but you've had multiple outside rounds of investors. How has that changed your culture? How did that shift things? How does it stress test? Obviously, incentives, cap table, all of that type of stuff. What was that like?
Yeah. So first, let me give you the quick financing history so people understand it. So we raised $1 million in 2000 seed capital when we first started the company. Then we did an A round in 2004, a B round in 2007, and a C round in 2009. Collectively raised about $20 million kind of in an A, B, and C round kind of throughout that time. And we sold the business for the first time in 2013 to Wells Carson, Anderson & Stowe, a very well-known blue chip private equity firm in New York. The venture guys, did between a 3 and 6x, depending on kind of where they kind of came in. And as an entrepreneur, you kind of become like a made guy. At that point now, from an early stage standpoint, you can always kind of go raise money, if you will. With Wells Carson, within 90 days after they bought the company, we acquired with them our largest competitor. And then the company literally went from 20 to 80 in revenue and -5 to positive 20 EBITDA. And we sold the company again in 2019 to Pamplona Capital Management. And Wells Carson, exited the business, and they had done well. And then, so in 2019, 2020 hits, COVID comes, the world and the business kind of gets halted for about a year trying to figure out what the future of the world was going to look like, and software and hospitals and everything that's kind of going on. So it's a bit of a rocky road, not a bit, it was a rocky road, kind of for us during this time. We sell the business for a third and final time in July of 2024 to a group in Palo Alto called SAI Group that's owned by an entrepreneur named Ramesh Wadhwani, who's on Time Magazine's top 100 AI minds in the world list, is like a maverick, if you will, in kind of enterprise AI for years, and a very successful guy. And so, so that's the history. So to your point, we've been through multiple venture capital rounds and multiple private equity turns, all of which bring with them new wrinkles and evolutions, because these firms, the moment you take outside capital, whether you're still in a majority position or a minority position, you again either have the strength to maintain authenticity, some of these core values, or you just get bulldozed, by somebody else's, if you will, in a way. And so we're fortunate, in that we had, I guess, the confidence and probably naivete at times to we would talk about these things during fundraising. I remember when the Wells Carson guys came into DC, there's 9 of them in suits. I'm dressed in a purple t-shirt with Air Jordans on kind of thing. And they come in and I'm like, guys, so glad you're here today. Before we get started, I just want to take you for a quick tour around the office, because on these little wood planks, we kind of have these 5 commitments and they're actually ordered for a reason. And I just kind of make sure you guys feel who we are. So basically we walk in the office and plank 1 is, these are our commitments. So commitment 1, to our patients, that we deliver you a great patient experience. Commitment number 2, to our clinicians, that we actually help make your job easier, through our software. Commitment number 3, to our customer, we deliver a return on the value. Number 4, to our employees, that we actually develop you as a full person, not just a professional. Commitment number 5, to our shareholders, so I'm basically telling them, hey, I just want you to understand, only if we fulfill these first 4 commitments will we be able to fulfill our commitment to you to create a return on your investment. So these are moments along the way that you have to have the confidence to be able to lean in, because you're doing diligence on them as well, but the humility to know, hey, they're going to bring with this a whole wave of expertise, of new people, of new input, and they're going to challenge almost everything you've ever done, And man, as an entrepreneur, last thing I'll say on this, not to go on too long, is when you raise capital, I've always found it's really interesting. There's this crazy psychological dynamic goes on. You're at your utmost highest confidence that somebody else has now valued your business at $30 million, $100 million, $40 million, whatever the number is. But at that same moment, you have this insecurity, because in their boardroom, when they go back, they're like, hey, he built a great company. There's no way he's going to run it. When we own it. And so you have this very strange, psychological test going on that entrepreneurs go through all the time. And I've dealt with this 3 times over, and it's been a really interesting ride every single time.
I think you hit on the crazy dynamic there, and that's why I wanted to hear how it impacted you, but also the organization. I wrote an article when I was a first-time founder for Inc. or Entrepreneur or something like that, because I felt in a big way it's this, one party is chasing a meal and the other one's running for its life. And so it's are you the fox or the rabbit, right? And clearly as the entrepreneur, you're the rabbit. And I've also sat there with so many VCs, and after my first company, I went into the venture side and was just passionate about continuing to grow businesses. And, it's some VCs and private equity as well, they treat these like trading cards, right? Especially in the venture world is, it's not going to make it, or it's just going to be a 2-bagger, blah, blah, blah. And of course, people really want to flex and talk about their grand slams, and that's great. But I was like, man, I've been on the other side of that, and that's my life. Literally, quit my job in the worst economy since the Great Depression, and, have levered every relationship that anyone that will take a meeting for you and all that type of stuff. And so to try to reconnect with that. And so I think you built an organization that was resilient, and then you also didn't shy away from it. You maintained that culture with outside capital coming through, and they were, hopefully smart enough and recognizing that that's the secret sauce, right? That's what makes you guys really unique.
Yeah, at times, and sometimes I'm sure, their eye rolls were not hidden; they were right in front of my face, and that's okay too, because we know as operators, hey man, we are driving so hard that it's not a bad thing. Even on things like culture, it's not a bad thing for people to actually pull up and say, hey, why do you think that person, is still contributing the way we need him or her to, for whatever the thing may be? This isn't a bad thing. But yeah, man, it's this tug and pull is a real one. You're not for the faint of heart, as you know, on both sides of the table that you've sat in your career.
Well, to not take up too much of your time, there's some that I want to know, and you guys, I think, are so uniquely positioned, but always want to know where technology impacts you. Obviously, we're in this wave of AI. But before that, and it might dovetail a little bit, I'm curious because you guys had to endure COVID in a way that almost no company I can think of did. And not only are we getting back online, but when we do, what does that mean for people? Was there a story that sticks out to you that you and your team, or, where you knew you delivered on the brand promise and you said, hey, we're making a difference. We're getting things back online?
Two quick stories. So number one is we have a product. It's called Get Well Loop. And pretty much it's like it's an authoring tool to create digital care plans. So if you're having your knee replaced or you're having a baby or you're going through a cancer procedure or whatever, it just allows you to like stay on plan, like next best step or whatever, and stay in the loop with your physicians. So when COVID hits, the world shuts down. There's no more money flowing. I mean, it's crazy. As you remember, all the PPE was kind of people trying to figure out how to get masks and all the whole thing. So we decided to take the Get Well Loop tool and to author 5 COVID care plans that would be designed so that people would know when they're safer to stay home or when they really need to go. Because remember, the ERs were so flooded that you didn't want people coming in. They didn't actually needed to be in there because it was dangerous to be there. And also it was overflooding them. Anyway, so we ended up within 3.5 weeks building 5 COVID loops. And we actually had them deployed in 200 command centers of both our customers and our non-customers for free. So this is about $10 million worth of software that we ended up giving away because this community is the one that supported us for at this point 20 years. And so we're like, hey, what can we do with our unique capabilities, to kind of help candidly the organizations be okay and the patients, be okay as well. And so the team was just unbelievably driven to go do this. And ultimately we probably had a couple, I think it was 2.5 to 3 million people like on these COVID care plans, like trying to help them care for themselves, and whatever the case would be. So that was one thing. And then the second thing was, you remember, like we knew right away during COVID how serious the mental health, crisis was going to be exacerbated. And so at the time, I happened to be in a fellowship at the Aspen Institute for Health Innovation and met a guy in Mississippi who runs a large nonprofit that deals with the hardest of the hard youth behavioral kind of challenges across all 82 counties in Mississippi. And we also turned, our capabilities to create, we were tech enabling what they call the science of hope. I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but there's this body of work around hope, being the number one determinant of a life well lived and of well-being. And we found a way to use the same capability to create, we took this hope science, lifted it out of a psychology journal and put it into a care plan. And we began screening middle school and high school kids across Jackson, Mississippi on their hope levels. And this work has now resulted in a $16 million grant, and they're rolling this out across, 40,000 kids right now. So these would be the kind of things that, man, when we stay true to who we are and the reason that we exist and what we've been through, you can do really important things with technology. And I'm very proud, of some of the things we actually leaned into during that time.
That's, it's incredible. I mean, what was left with Pandora's box? It was hope, right?
No doubt.
All right. I'm going to let you run. It's been just a truly pleasurable experience. I think I'm going to have to audit this class at Georgetown next time you're talking. Sure. Anything else that you want to touch on before we go? I mean, look, that's a foregone conclusion for me with your new capital partner, your new CEO, that the future's bright. You guys are going to be on the front side of AI. If you want to touch on it, please do. But the reality is you built an incredible business with, a lot of humanity, and you've impacted millions of lives. And so we're all the better for it.
Hey, man, I just leave with a dose of gratitude for you. And I know your partner, Andrew, quite well. Man, you guys, you've been on both sides of it, so you kind of know. But you guys, you actually spend your time and capital finding entrepreneurs that really care about their customers, their employees, kind of what they're trying to impact on the world. I'm so grateful for you and what you guys do, and I appreciate you having me on.
Michael O'Neill, everybody, thank you so much.